Hey guys, and welcome to Painful Pages, to all you night owls and history enthusiasts, to another journey into the shadows of the past. Settle in, find a comfortable position, and let your mind drift gently back in time. Tonight, we embark on a tranquil journey through the life and legacy of one of history's most remarkable figures, Leonardo da Vinci. As you listen, allow the gentle cadence of the past to lull you into a state of restful curiosity, where the boundaries between waking and dreaming begin to blur. Leonardo da Vinci, the very name, conjures images of mysterious paintings, intricate sketches, and notebooks filled with mirrored writing and fantastical inventions. He is often called the quintessential Renaissance man, a painter, sculptor, architect, engineer, scientist, anatomist, musician, and philosopher. Yet, behind the legend lies a real person, shaped by the world of 15th century Italy, by the landscapes of Tuscany, and by the currents of thought and culture that defined his era. Why do we remember Leonardo? His works, such as the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, are among the most celebrated in the world. His notebooks, filled with observations and inventions, reveal a mind endlessly curious, always seeking to understand the workings of nature and the human body. But Leonardo's importance goes beyond his art and inventions. He represents a way of seeing, a belief that the world is knowable, that beauty and science are intertwined, and that the pursuit of knowledge is a noble calling. Before we deep dive into the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know where in the world you're tuning in from tonight. Our understanding of Leonardo comes from many sources. His surviving paintings and drawings, of course, but also his thousands of pages of notes, written in his distinctive left-handed mirror script. Letters, contracts, and contemporary accounts provide glimpses into his life and relationships. Later, biographies, such as Giorgio Vasari's Lives of the Artists, add layers of interpretation and myth. Modern scholarship, using the tools of art history, science, and archival research, continues to uncover new details and challenge old assumptions. As we journey through Leonardo's life, we will move gently and chronologically, pausing to explore the world he inhabited. We will visit the small Tuscan town of Vinci, where he was born, and the bustling city of Florence, cradle of the Renaissance. We will walk the halls of Milan's ducal court, where Leonardo served as engineer and artist, and follow him to Rome, and finally to France, where he spent his last years. Along the way, we will immerse ourselves in the textures of daily life, the tools and pigments of the artist's studio, the sounds of the Florentine streets, the rituals of courtly life, and the quiet moments of observation that filled Leonardo's notebooks. We will explore the languages he spoke and wrote, the social structures that shaped his opportunities, the religious beliefs that informed his worldview, and the scientific questions that drove his restless mind. We will also consider the broader context, the rise of the Renaissance, the rediscovery of ancient texts, the interplay of art, science, and technology, and the shifting political landscape of Italy. Leonardo's story is not just the story of an individual, but of a world in transition, a world moving from medieval certainties to the open horizons of modernity. As you listen, let the details wash over you like a gentle tide. There is no need to remember every name or date. Instead, allow yourself to be carried by the flow of history, to imagine the sights, sounds, and sensations of Leonardo's world. By the end of our journey, you may find yourself not only more knowledgeable, but also more attuned to the quiet wonder that animated Leonardo's life, a sense of awe at the beauty and complexity of the world. Now, let us begin with the earliest traces of Leonardo's story, his origins, and the world into which he was born. To understand Leonardo da Vinci, we must first travel to the gentle hills of Tuscany in central Italy. In the year 1452, the world of Leonardo's birth was a patchwork of city-states, rural villages, and fortified castles set amidst olive groves, vineyards, and cypress trees. The air was scented with wild herbs and the distant smoke of wood fires. The rhythms of life were shaped by the seasons, the cycles of planting and harvest, and the tolling of church bells. Leonardo was born on April 15, 1452, in the small town of Vinci, about 20 miles west of Florence. Vinci was, and remains, a modest settlement, perched on a low hill overlooking the Arno Valley. The town's name, Vinci, would become forever linked with Leonardo, who would sign his works Leonardo da Vinci, literally Leonardo from Vinci. His birth was recorded in the local notary's register, a simple entry noting the arrival of a boy, the illegitimate son of Ser Piero da Vinci, a respected notary, and a local peasant woman named Caterina. In 15th century Italy, illegitimacy was not uncommon, and while it carried certain social limitations, it did not prevent Leonardo from receiving affection or, eventually, education. The world into which Leonardo was born was one of transition. The Middle Ages were giving way to the Renaissance period. Florence, just a day's journey from Vinci, was at the heart of this transformation. The city's wealthy merchant families, such as the Medici, sponsored artists, architects, and scholars, creating an environment where talent and curiosity could flourish. But in Vinci, life was simpler and slower. The town was surrounded by fields and forests, and the people lived close to the land. Leonardo's early years would have been shaped by the sights and sounds of rural Tuscany, the songs of birds, the rustle of wind in the trees, the distant barking of dogs, and the laughter of children at play. He would have watched farmers tending their crops, shepherds guiding their flocks, and artisans at work in their shops. From his mother, Caterina, Leonardo may have learned the rhythms of domestic life, how to tend a garden, prepare food, and care for animals. From his father's family, he would have been exposed to the world of law, property, and civic responsibility. Though he was not raised in his father's household, Ser Piero acknowledged Leonardo and ensured he received some education. The earliest evidence of Leonardo's talents comes not from grand works of art, but from small, everyday observations. As a child, he was fascinated by nature. He watched the flight of birds, the flow of water, the patterns of leaves and flowers. He sketched what he saw, using whatever materials were at hand, charcoal, chalk, or a pointed stick in the dust. These early drawings did not survive, but later accounts describe a boy with an insatiable curiosity and a keen eye for detail. Leonardo's family was neither noble nor destitute. His father, Ser Piero, was a notaria, respected profession in Renaissance Italy, responsible for drafting legal documents, contracts, and wills. This position brought a measure of stability and respectability, and allowed Leonardo access to the world of educated men. His mother, Caterina, was of humble origins, and little is known of her later life. Some accounts suggest she married another local man and had more children. While Leonardo was raised primarily by his father's family in the countryside around Vinci, Leonardo would have encountered a world rich in sensory experience. The landscape was dotted with small farms, vineyards, and olive groves. Streams and rivers wound through the valleys, providing water for crops and power for mills. The changing seasons brought different colors, scents, and sounds, a constant source of inspiration for the young Leonardo. Education in rural Tuscany was informal but not absent. Leonardo may have attended a local school where he would have learned to read, write, and perform basic arithmetic. He quickly showed a talent for drawing, and his father, recognizing his son's abilities, arranged for him to apprentice in Florence, the artistic capital of Italy. Before we follow Leonardo to Florence, let us pause to consider the broader world of his childhood. The mid-15th century was a time of change and uncertainty. The Black Death had swept through Europe a century earlier, leaving scars on the land and its people. The Ottoman Empire was expanding, and Constantinople would fall just a year after Leonardo's birth. Yet, in Italy, a new spirit was stirring. The rediscovery of ancient Greek and Roman texts, the rise of humanism, and the patronage of wealthy families were creating an environment where art, science, and literature could flourish. In Florence, artists such as Donatello, Masaccio, and Fra Angelico were transforming painting and sculpture. Architects like Brunelleschi were designing new churches and palaces. Scholars were translating ancient texts and debating the nature of the universe into this world. Leonardo was born a child of both the countryside and the city, of humble origins and great potential. His early years in Vinci would shape his lifelong fascination with nature, his keen powers of observation, and his belief that art and science were inseparable. As we leave the hills of Vinci behind, let us follow the young Leonardo to Florence, where his talents would find new expression, and where the next chapter of his extraordinary life would begin. As we follow the young Leonardo from the gentle hills of Vinci to the bustling city of Florence, let us pause to immerse ourselves in the material world that shaped his daily life. Imagine, for a moment, the sights, sounds, and textures of 15th century Italy, a world both familiar and distant, where the rhythms of life were marked by the rising and setting of the sun, the tolling of church bells, and the changing of the seasons. Florence, in Leonardo's youth, was a city of stone and light. Narrow streets wound between tall, ochre-colored buildings, their facades adorned with carved stone and ironwork. The air was filled with the mingled scents of baking bread, fresh herbs, and the smoke of wood fires. Merchants called out from their stalls, selling fruits, vegetables, and spices brought from distant lands. Artisans worked in open workshops, shaping wood, metal, and leather into tools, furniture, and clothing. The material culture of Leonardo's world was rich and varied. In the home, daily life revolved around simple but sturdy furnishings, wooden tables and benches, chests for storing clothing and linens, and beds draped with woven blankets. Floors were often made of terracotta tiles or packed earth, and windows were covered with oiled cloth or wooden shutters to keep out the chill. Light came from candles or oil lamps, casting a warm, flickering glow in the evenings. Clothing reflected both social status and local tradition. Men wore tunics or doublets, often belted at the waist, with hose or leggings and sturdy leather. Shoes. Women's dresses were long and flowing, with fitted bodices and full skirts, sometimes adorned with embroidery or lace. Fabrics ranged from coarse wool and linen for the poor to fine silks and velvets for the wealthy. Colors were often muted, but the rich could afford vibrant dyes-deep reds, blues, and greens that signaled their status. Food was simple but nourishing, shaped by the rhythms of the land and the ingenuity of its people. Bread, made from wheat or barley, was a staple at every meal. Olive oil, cheese, and fresh vegetables were common, along with beans, lentils, and seasonal fruits. Meat was less frequent, reserved for special occasions or the tables of the wealthy. Of choice for most, in the artist's studio, the tools of creation were both ancient and innovative. Wooden easels held panels or canvases, while palettes of wood or ceramic bore dabs of pigment ground from minerals, plants, and insects. Brushes were made from animal hair, bound to wooden handles with string or glue. Pigments were mixed with egg yolk, oil, or water to create tempera or oil paints. Florence would have introduced him to the full range of artistic materials and techniques. As an apprentice in the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio, he learned to prepare panels, mix pigments, and apply gold leaf. He studied the human form by drawing from life, observing the play of light and shadow on skin and fabric. He learned to sculpt in clay and wax, to cast in bronze, and to carve in marble and wood. But Leonardo's curiosity extended far beyond the confines of the studio. He was fascinated by machines and mechanisms, by the way things worked. He observed the gears and pulleys of mills and workshops, the flow of water in fountains and aqueducts, the flight of birds and the movement of clouds. He filled his notebooks with sketches of tools, bridges, and fantastical inventions, some practical, others purely imaginative. Daily life in Florence was shaped by both tradition and innovation. The city was a center of trade and commerce, its markets filled with goods from across Europe and the Mediterranean. Silk and woolen cloth produced in local workshops were exported to distant lands. Goldsmiths and jewelers crafted intricate ornaments, while potters and glassmakers created vessels of beauty and utility. The rhythms of work and leisure were marked by the church calendar. Feast days and festivals brought processions, music, and pageantry to the streets. Guilds associations of craftsmen and merchants organized social and religious events, as well as regulating the quality and price of goods. The family was the basic unit of society, with strong ties of loyalty and obligation. Children were expected to learn the skills of their parents, and marriages were often arranged to strengthen alliances and secure property. For Leonardo, daily life was a tapestry of observation and experience. He wandered the streets and countryside, sketchbook in hand, recording the faces of passersby, the shapes of plants and animals, the play of light on water. He was endlessly curious, always seeking to understand the underlying principles of what he saw. His notebooks are filled with lists of questions and observations. Why is the sky blue? How do birds fly? What causes the flow of blood in the veins? In the evenings, families gathered around the hearth to share stories, sing songs, and discuss the events of the day. News traveled slowly, carried by travelers, merchants, and letters. Books were rare and precious, copied by hand or, increasingly, printed on the new presses that were beginning to the practical and the beautiful. It was a world where art and craft were inseparable, where the skills of the hand were valued alongside the insights of the mind. Leonardo's genius lay in his ability to see connections, to recognize the patterns that linked the flight of a bird to the design of a flying machine, the structure of a flower to the proportions of the human body. As we imagine the daily life of Leonardo and his contemporaries, let us pause to appreciate the richness and complexity of their world. The tools and objects they used, the food they ate, the clothes they wore, and by the creativity of countless hands. In this world, Leonardo found inspiration at every turn. The textures of stone and wood, the colors of earth and sky, the sounds of laughter and song all became part of his artistic and scientific vision. His life was a continuous act of observation, a search for understanding, and a celebration of the beauty and mystery of the everyday. As we leave the bustling streets of Florence and the quiet hills of Vinci behind, let us turn now to another aspect of Leonardo's world, the languages he spoke and wrote, and the ways in which writing shaped his thought and legacy. Let us now drift gently into the world of language and writing, world that shaped Leonardo da Vinci's thoughts, his art, and his enduring legacy. In the quiet of the evening, imagine the soft rustle of parchment, the scratch of a quill, and the gentle murmur of voices in the Tuscan dialect. Language, in Leonardo's time, was both a tool and a mystery, a bridge between the inner world of thought and the outer world of communication. Leonardo was born into a world where Latin was the language of scholarship, law, and the church, while the people spoke a variety of local dialects. In Vinci and Florence, the spoken language was a form of Tuscan Italian, rich in melody and expression. This dialect, thanks to the works of Dante, Petrarch, and Boccaccio, would become the foundation of modern Italian. For Leonardo, language was not just a means of communication, but a subject of fascination and study. As a child, Leonardo learned to read and write in Italian, and later acquired some knowledge of Latin. His formal education was limited, did not attend a university, and his grasp of Latin grammar was never perfect. Yet, he was a voracious reader, and his notebooks reveal a mind constantly at work, seeking to master new words, concepts, and ideas. He copied passages from books, made lists of vocabulary, and even invented new terms when existing ones did not suffice. Leonardo's writing is distinctive, not only for its content, but for its form. He wrote almost exclusively in mere script writing, from right to left, so that the text could only be read with the aid of a mirror. The reasons for this are still debated. Some suggest it was a way to keep his notes private, or to avoid smudging the ink with his left hand. Whatever the reason, the result is a body of work that is both enigmatic and deeply personal. His notebooks, known as codices, are among the most remarkable documents of the Renaissance. Thousands of pages survive, filled with sketches, diagrams, and observations on subjects ranging from anatomy and engineering to botany and painting. The pages are crowded with words and images, often overlapping, as if Leonardo's thoughts were too abundant to be contained by the margins. He wrote in a clear, legible hand, with a preference for short, direct sentences and a love of lists and questions. Leonardo's language is precise and descriptive, shaped by his desire to observe and record the world as accurately as possible. He coined new terms for scientific concepts, described the movements of water and air, and catalogued the parts of the human body with meticulous care. His writing is often accompanied by drawings, sometimes simple sketches, sometimes elaborate studies that illuminate and expand upon his words. The act of writing, for Leonardo, was inseparable from the act of seeing. Describe the tongue of the woodpecker. Observe the muscles of the neck. Explain why the sky is blue. These notes are not just records of observation, but prompts for further inquiry, a testament to his restless curiosity. Leonardo's use of language was also shaped by the intellectual currents of his time. The Renaissance was an age of rediscovery, when ancient texts were being translated and studied anew. Humanist scholars debated the merits of Latin and the vernacular, and artists and writers sought to express themselves in ways that were both beautiful and true. Leonardo, though not a scholar in the traditional sense, was deeply influenced by these debates. He valued clarity and precision, and sought to make his work accessible to others, even as he struggled with the limitations of his own education in his letters and contracts. Leonardo wrote in a formal, respectful tone, using the conventions of the day. He addressed patrons and employers with deference, and described his skills and accomplishments with modesty and care. In his personal notes, however, his voice is more direct, sometimes playful, sometimes philosophical. He mused on the nature of life and death, the fleetingness of beauty, and the mysteries of the natural world. The legacy of Leonardo's writing is profound. His notebooks, once scattered and neglected, are now treasured as windows into the mind of a genius. They reveal not only his artistic and scientific achievements, but also his methods of inquiry, his habits of thought, and his deep engagement with the world around him. Through his words and images, we glimpse the inner life of a man who sought to understand everything, and who believed that knowledge was a form of beauty. As we leave behind the world of language and writing, let us turn our attention to the structures of society and economy that shaped Leonardo's opportunities and challenges. In the next section, we will explore the organization of cities, the roles of craftsmen and merchants, and the rhythms of work and trade in Renaissance Italy. Let us now gently explore the social and economic fabric of the world that shaped Leonardo da Vinci, a world of bustling cities, quiet villages, and intricate networks of trade and craft. As you listen, imagine the steady rhythm of daily labor, the hum of conversation in the marketplace, and the quiet dignity of artisans at their workbenches. In this world, every person had a place, every task a purpose, and every day unfolded within a web of relationships and responsibilities. In 15th century Italy, the city-states of Florence, Milan, Venice, and others were centers of commerce, art, and political power, each with its own traditions and institutions. The countryside, by contrast, was home to farmers, shepherds, and laborers whose lives were shaped by the cycles of nature and the demands of the land. Power was concentrated in the hands of wealthy merchant families, most notably the Medici, whose patronage of the arts and sciences helped to fuel the Renaissance. The city was divided into neighborhoods, each with its own churches, markets, and guilds. The streets were alive with the sounds of commerce, the clatter of carts, the calls of vendors, merchants, and professionals who regulated the quality and price of goods, set standards for training and apprenticeship, and provided social and religious support for their members. There were guilds for wool workers, silk weavers, goldsmiths, stonemasons, and many others. The painters, sculptors, and architects belonged to the Guild of St. Luke, named for the patron saint of artists. Leonardo's own path was shaped by this system. As a boy, he was apprenticed to Andrea del Verrocchio, a master artist whose workshop was a hive of activity. Here, Leonardo learned not only the techniques of painting and sculpture, but also the habits of discipline, collaboration, and innovation that defined the guild tradition. He worked alongside other apprentices, each contributing to the creation of altarpieces, portraits, and decorative objects for churches, palaces, and private homes. The workshop was both a place of learning and a center of production. Apprentices prepared pigments, stretched canvases, carved frames, and assisted in the execution of large commissions. They learned by doing, observing the master at work, and gradually taking on more responsibility as their skills developed. The relationship between master and apprentice was both professional and personal, marked by mutual respect and a shared commitment to excellence beyond the world of art. Florence was a center of banking, trade, and manufacturing. The city's merchants traded wool, silk, spices, and precious metals with partners across Europe and the Mediterranean. Banking families such as the Medici managed vast networks of credit and investment, financing not only commerce but also the construction of churches, palaces, and public works. The wealth generated by these activities supported a vibrant culture of patronage in which artists, writers, and scholars found opportunities to pursue their crafts. Social life in Florence was structured by class, family, and gender. At the top were the grandi, the great families, who held political and economic power. At the base of the social pyramid were laborers, servants, and the poor, whose lives were often marked by hardship and uncertainty. Women's roles were largely defined by family and marriage, though some found ways to participate in the economic and cultural life of the city. In the countryside, life was shaped by the rhythms of agriculture. Farmers grew wheat, barley, olives, and grapes, tended livestock, and managed woodlands and pastures. The land was divided into small plots, often owned by wealthy urban families and worked by tenant farmers or sharecroppers. Village life was close-knit, with strong ties of kinship and mutual support. Festivals, religious observances, and communal labor brought people together. Caravans and ships brought goods from distant lands, silks from the east, spices from India, gold from Africa, and furs from the north. Markets were places of exchange, not only of goods but of ideas, news, and innovations. The city's streets were filled with people from many backgrounds, merchants, diplomats, scholars, and travelers, each contributing to the rich tapestry of urban life. For Leonardo, this world of social and economic complexity was both a source of opportunity and a field of inquiry. He observed the workings of mills and workshops, studied the design of bridges and fortifications, and marveled at the ingenuity of craftsmen and engineers. His notebooks are filled with sketches of machines, tools, and architectural plans, reflecting his fascination with the practical arts and the organization of labor. Leonardo's own career was shaped by the patronage system. Artists depended on the support of wealthy individuals, religious institutions, and civic authorities for commissions and employment. Leonardo worked for a variety of patrons, including the Medici in Florence, Ludovico Sforza in Milan, and later, King Francis I of France. Each relationship brought new challenges and opportunities, as well as the need to navigate the shifting currents of politics and power. The economic life of Renaissance Italy was thus a dynamic interplay of tradition and innovation, local and global, individual and collective. It was a world in which the skills of the hand and the insights of the mind were both valued, and in which the pursuit of excellence was a shared ideal. As we leave behind the bustling markets and quiet workshops of Florence, let us turn our attention to another dimension of Leonardo's world, the realm of religion and mythology, where faith, ritual, and imagination shaped the lives and aspirations of all. Let us now enter the sacred and symbolic world of religion and mythology, a world that shaped the beliefs, rituals, and imaginations of Leonardo da Vinci and his contemporaries. As you listen, imagine the soft glow of candlelight in a quiet chapel, the scent of incense rising in the air, and the solemn chants echoing through vaulted stone halls. And the mysteries of faith were woven into the fabric of daily life. In 15th century Italy, the Catholic Church was the central institution of spiritual and social life. Its teachings shaped the rhythms of the year, the structure of the week, and the milestones of birth, marriage, and death. Churches and monasteries stood at the heart of every town and village, their bells marking the hours of prayer and labor, their domes and spires reaching toward heaven. For Leonardo, as for all people of his time, religion was both a personal and communal experience. Baptized in the parish church of Vinci, he grew up surrounded by the symbols and stories of Christianity. The lives of the saints, the miracles of Christ, and the mysteries of the Virgin Mary were depicted in frescoes, altarpieces, and stained glass. Religious festivals filled the calendar, bringing processions, music, and pageantry to the streets. The rituals of the church shaped the rhythms of daily life. The Mass, celebrated in Latin, was the central act of worship, accompanied by prayers, hymns, and the reading of Scripture. The sacraments, baptism, confirmation, confession, communion, marriage, and last rites marked the stages of life and offered moments of grace and reflection. Fasting and feasting, penance and celebration were woven into the cycle of the year. Religious art was both a form of devotion and a means of instruction. Paintings, sculptures, and illuminated manuscripts depicted scenes from the Bible, the lives of the saints, and the mysteries of faith. These images were not merely decorative. They were intended to inspire contemplation, teach moral lessons, and evoke a sense of the sacred. Artists like Leonardo were called upon to translate the invisible truths of faith into visible forms. Tradition and his early works reflect the themes and symbols of Christian art, yet his notebooks reveal a mind that questioned and explored, seeking to understand the natural world as a reflection of the divine order. He wrote of God as the prime mover, the source of all life and beauty, and saw nature as a book written in the language of mathematics and proportion. In his paintings, Leonardo brought a new depth of emotion and realism to religious subjects. The Annunciation, painted early in his career, depicts the angel Gabriel greeting Mary with a gesture of gentle reverence, the figures bathed in soft, natural light. The Last Supper, created for the refectory of Santa Maria del Grazie in Milan, captures the moment of Christ's revelation with a sense of drama and psychological insight. Their gestures and expressions revealing the inner turmoil of the soul. Leonardo's fascination with the human body was also rooted in religious and philosophical questions. He believed that the body was a microcosm of the universe, a reflection of divine harmony and order. He wrote, "The human foot is a masterpiece of engineering and a work of art." Seeing in every detail the hand of the Creator beyond Christianity was a time of rediscovery when the stories of Greek and Roman gods, heroes, and philosophers were being studied and celebrated anew. Artists and writers drew inspiration from the tales of Zeus and Athena, Hercules and Venus, weaving classical motifs into their works alongside Christian themes. Leonardo's notebooks contain references to ancient myths and allegories, as well as reflections on the nature of the soul, the immortality of the spirit, and the relationship between reason and faith. In his art, he often blended Christian and classical imagery, creating works that spoke to both the heart and the mind. Festivals and processions were an important part of religious life, bringing the community together in acts of collective devotion and celebration. The Feast of Corpus Christi, the processions of Holy Week, and the pageants of Saints' Days filled the streets with color, music, and ritual. Leonardo himself designed costumes, floats, and stage machinery for these events, using his skills as an artist and engineer to enhance the spectacle and meaning of the celebrations. Religious brotherhoods and confraternities played a vital role in the spiritual and social life of the city. These lay organizations, dedicated to acts of charity, prayer, and mutual support, provided a sense of belonging and purpose for their members. They commissioned works of art, organized processions, and cared for the sick and poor. Leonardo's patrons were often members of these groups, and his works were created for their chapels, altars, and meeting halls. The world of religion and mythology in Leonardo's time was thus a tapestry of belief, ritual, and imagination. It was a world in which the sacred and the secular, the ancient and the new, were woven together in a continuous dialogue. For Leonardo, this world was both a source of inspiration and a field of inquiry, a place where art, process that would shape the opportunities and challenges of Leonardo's career. And the formation of states in Renaissance Italy, a world of stone towers, bustling piazzas, and shifting alliances, hum of voices in council chambers. In this world, the city was not just a place to live, but a living organism, shaped by the ambitions and dreams of its people. By the time of Leonardo's birth, Italy was a mosaic of city-states, each fiercely independent, each with its own government, laws, and traditions. Florence, Milan, Venice, Rome, and Naples were the great powers. Smaller cities and towns, like Vinci, lived in the shadow of these giants, their destinies often shaped by forces beyond their control. Florence, where Leonardo spent his youth, was a republic in name, but in practice, power was concentrated in the hands of a few wealthy families. The Medici, through their banking empire and political skill, became the de facto rulers of the city, guiding its fortunes for generations. The city was governed by a series of councils and magistrates, chosen from among the leading citizens. public life revolved around the Palazzo della Signoria, the seat of government, where laws were debated, opening onto broad piazzas where markets, festivals, and public gatherings took place. Side, the great dome of the cathedral, designed by Bruno Leschi, dominated the skyline, a symbol of the city's ambition and ingenuity. Milan, where Leonardo would later spend many years, was a duchy ruled by the Sforza family. The city was a center of military power, its walls and fortifications among the strongest in Italy. The court of Ludovico Sforza, known as Il Moro, was a place of splendor and intrigue, where artists, engineers, and scholars mingled with soldiers, diplomats, and courtiers. Leonardo served as court artist and engineer, designing everything from stage sets to fortresses. Naval strength, the city's unique geography, built on a series of islands in a lagoon, shaped its architecture and way of life. The Doge, elected for life, presided over a complex system of councils and magistrates, ensuring a balance of power among the city's leading families. Venice's wealth and stability made it a magnet for artists, merchants, and travelers from across Europe and the East. The process of urbanization in Renaissance Italy was both organic and planned. Cities grew as people migrated from the countryside in search of work, security, and opportunity. Walls and gates were built to protect against invasion. Public works, bridges, fountains, roads, and aqueducts were constructed to improve the quality of life and demonstrate the city's prosperity. The formation of states was a complex and often turbulent process. Alliances were made and broken. Wars fought over territory and honor, and treaties negotiated to maintain a fragile balance of power. Spanish, German, and Papal, each seeking to expand its influence. Result was a landscape of constant change, where fortunes could rise and fall with dizzying speed. For Leonardo, the world of city-states and courts was both a stage and a laboratory. He moved between Florence, Milan, Venice, Rome, and eventually France, seeking patrons and opportunities. Each city offered its own challenges and rewards, its own blend of tradition and innovation. Leonardo adapted to the customs and expectations of each place, learning to navigate the intricacies of court life, civic politics, and artistic patronage. The administration of these cities and states was a blend of ancient and modern practices. Laws were codified and enforced by magistrates, while taxes and tariffs funded public works and defense. Civic pride was expressed through the construction of churches, palaces, and public spaces, as well as through the patronage of art and learning. The ideal of the civic humanist, a citizen who contributed to the common good through service, knowledge, and virtue, was celebrated in literature and practice. Leonardo's own work reflected the concerns of his patrons and the needs of the cities he served. He advised on the construction of fortifications, bridges, and canals, applying his knowledge of engineering and physics to the challenges of urban life. The rise of cities and the formation of states in Renaissance Italy created a dynamic environment in which talent and ambition could flourish. It was a world of opportunity and uncertainty, where the boundaries between art, piazzas, and quiet council chambers. Let us turn our attention to another aspect of Leonardo's world, the arts of war and peace, the technologies of defense and conquest, and the delicate dance of diplomacy and alliance. Let us now drift into the world of military innovation. An expansion, a world of fortified cities, armored knights, and the ever-present possibility of conflict. As you listen, imagine the distant clang of blacksmiths' hammers, the measured tread of soldiers on parade, and the quiet tension of watchmen on city walls. In Leonardo's Italy, the arts of war and peace were closely intertwined, shaping the destinies of cities and the lives of those who served them. The Italian peninsula in the 15th and early 16th centuries was a patchwork of rival city-states, duchies, and kingdoms. Competition for territory, resources, and prestige often led to war. Armies marched across the landscape, sieges were laid to walled towns, and alliances shifted with the changing winds of politics. The threat of invasion from neighboring states or foreign powers was a constant concern for rulers and citizens alike. Military technology was evolving rapidly. The age of the armored knight was giving way to new forms of warfare, shaped by the introduction of gunpowder, cannons, and firearms. Fortifications were redesigned to withstand artillery, with thick, angled walls and bastions replacing the high, thin walls of earlier times. Engineers and architects were in high demand, tasked with designing defenses, building bridges, and improving the logistics of supply and movement. Leonardo da Vinci was deeply fascinated by the mechanics of war. His notebooks are filled with sketches and designs for weapons, machines, and fortifications, some practical, others visionary. He drew plans for armored vehicles, multi-barreled cannons, giant crossbows, and even a prototype for a diving suit. He studied the flight of projectiles, the stresses on bridges, and the organization of troops in battle. In 1482, seeking new opportunities, Leonardo wrote a famous letter to Ludovico Sforza, Duke of Milan, offering his services as a military engineer. In this letter, he described his abilities to design bridges, tunnels, siege engines, and defensive works. He promised to create machines of wonderful efficacy and not in common use, and to make bombards, mortar, and fire-throwing engines of beautiful and practical design. Only at the end of the letter did he mention his skills as a painter and sculptor. During his years in Milan, Leonardo worked on a variety of military projects. He designed plans for the city's fortifications, studied the flow of water for defensive moats, and created models for new types of weapons. He also organized theatrical spectacles and pageants for the court, blending his knowledge of engineering with his love of art and performance. Leonardo's approach to military technology was both analytical and imaginative. He observed the weaknesses of existing defenses, proposed improvements, and experimented with new materials and techniques. He believed that the principles of nature geometry, proportion, and mechanics could be applied to the art of war, just as they could to painting or architecture. Yet, for all his interest in military matters, Leonardo was not a man of violence. His writings reveal a deep respect for life and a preference for peaceful solutions, and his inventions were as likely to be aimed at defense and protection as at attack. He once wrote, "He who does not value life does not deserve it," reflecting his belief in the sanctity of all living things. Diplomacy and alliance were as important as military strength in the politics of Renaissance Italy. Rulers negotiated treaties, arranged marriages, and exchanged gifts to secure their positions and avoid conflict. Ambassadors traveled between courts, carrying messages and intelligence. Artists and engineers, like Leonardo, often served as unofficial diplomats, their skills and reputations opening doors and building bridges between rival states. Leonardo's own career was shaped by these dynamics. He moved from Florence to Milan, from Milan to Venice, and later to Rome and France, always seeking new patrons and opportunities. His reputation as an artist and engineer made him a valuable asset to the courts he served, and his ability to navigate the complexities of politics and power was as important as his technical skills. The world of military and expansion in Leonardo's time was thus a world of innovation and uncertainty, where the boundaries between art, science, and war were fluid. It was a world in which the pursuit of knowledge and the demands of survival were closely linked, and where the genius of individuals could shape the fate of cities and nations. As we leave behind the clangor of the forge and the quiet tension of the watchtower, let us turn our attention to a brighter chapter in Leonardo's life, the flowering of his genius during the golden age of the Renaissance, a time of achievement, prosperity, and cultural brilliance. Now, let us gently enter the golden age of Leonardo da Vinci's life, a period of extraordinary achievement, creative flowering, and lasting influence. Imagine the soft light of a Florentine studio, the quiet concentration of an artist at work, and the hum of conversation in the courts of Milan and Florence. This was a time when Leonardo's talents reached their fullest expression, and when his vision helped to shape the very spirit of the Renaissance. The years between the late 1480s and the early 1510s are often considered the peak of Leonardo's career. During this time, he produced some of his most celebrated works, deepened his studies of nature and the human body, and became a central figure in the artistic and intellectual life of Italy in Milan. Under the patronage of Ludovico Sforza, Leonardo found both stability and opportunity. The Sforza court was a center of culture and innovation, attracting artists, musicians, engineers, and scholars from across Europe. Leonardo's role was multifaceted. He was court painter, military engineer, architect, and designer of festivals and pageants. He moved easily between the worlds of art and science, blending observation with imagination and tradition with invention. It was in Milan that Leonardo painted The Last Supper, a masterpiece that would become one of the most famous images in Western art, created for the refectory of the monastery of Santa Maria del Grazie. Leonardo's composition is both dramatic and deeply human, with each apostle reacting in a unique and expressive way. The use of perspective, light, and gesture creates a sense of unity and movement, drawing the viewer into the emotional heart of the scene. During these years, Leonardo also worked on the monumental project of the Sforza Horse, an enormous bronze equestrian statue intended to honor Ludovico's father, Francesco Sforza. Leonardo devoted years to studying the anatomy of horses, creating detailed sketches and models, and developing innovative casting techniques. Although the statue was never completed, the surviving drawings and accounts testify to Leonardo's ambition and technical skill. Leonardo's notebooks from this period are filled with studies of anatomy, mechanics, botany, and hydraulics. He dissected human and animal bodies, seeking to understand the structure and function of muscles, bones, and organs. His drawings of the human skeleton, the heart, and the vascular system are among the most accurate and beautiful ever made. Combining scientific precision with artistic sensitivity, he also explored the movement of water, the growth of plants, and the flight of birds. He designed machines for lifting, pumping, and measuring, as well as fantastical inventions such as flying machines, armored vehicles, and underwater diving suits. Many of these ideas were centuries ahead of their time, and while few were built, they reveal the breadth and depth of Leonardo's curiosity. Leonardo's reputation as an artist and thinker grew steadily. He was sought after by patrons in Florence, Milan, and beyond. In Florence, he painted the enigmatic Mona Lisa, a portrait that has become a symbol of mystery and beauty. The sitter's identity remains uncertain. Leonardo's use of sfumatura technique of blending colors and tones to create a soft, smoky effect gives the painting its lifelike quality and sense of depth. During this golden age, Leonardo also collaborated with other great artists of the Renaissance, including Sandro Botticelli, Domenico Ghirlandaio, and Michelangelo Buonarroti. The exchange of ideas and techniques among these masters helped to push the boundaries of art and science, creating a climate of innovation and excellence. Leonardo's influence extended beyond the visual arts. He was a skilled musician, playing the lyre and composing songs for courtly entertainments. He wrote treatises on painting, anatomy, and mechanics, sharing his insights with students and colleagues. His notebooks, filled with observations, sketches, and reflections, became a treasure trove of knowledge for future generations. The prosperity and stability of the Italian courts during this period provided the conditions for Leonardo's genius to flourish. The patronage of rulers like Ludovico Sforza and the Medici family allowed artists and scholars to pursue their work without fear of want or persecution. The rediscovery of ancient texts, the growth of printing, and the rise of humanist philosophy created an environment in which knowledge was valued and shared. Yet, even at the height of his success, Leonardo remained restless and searching. He was never content to repeat himself, always seeking new challenges and new ways of seeing. His art and science were inseparable, each informing and enriching the other. He believed that beauty and truth were found in the careful observation of nature, and that the pursuit of knowledge was a lifelong journey. As we linger in this golden age, let us appreciate the fullness of Leonardo's achievement, the harmony of art and science, the depth of his curiosity, and the generosity of his spirit. His work stands as a testament to the power of human creativity and to the enduring value of wonder and inquiry as the golden light of the Renaissance begins to fade. We must now turn to the later years of Leonardo's life, a time of change, challenge, and eventual decline, but also of reflection and legacy as the golden age of Leonardo da Vinci's life gently recedes. We enter a period marked by change, uncertainty, and the quiet approach of twilight. Imagine the soft hush of an aging artist's studio, the flicker of candlelight. In these later years, Leonardo's world shifted, yet his spirit of inquiry and reflection endured. The turn of the 16th century brought turbulence to Italy. The political stability that had nurtured the Renaissance began to unravel. Were overthrown. The Medici in Florence faced exile and return. The courts that had once been centers of art and learning became places of intrigue and uncertainty. For Leonardo, these changes meant a life of movement and adaptation. In 1499, as French forces entered Milan, he left the city, taking with him his notebooks, a few paintings, and his loyal pupils. He traveled to Mantua, Venice, and back to Florence, seeking new patrons and opportunities, though he was welcomed and respected wherever he went. The security and resources of his Milanese years were gone. In Florence, Leonardo found himself in a city transformed. The young Michelangelo and Raphael were rising stars, and the competition for commissions was fierce. Leonardo's own projects were often delayed or left unfinished as he struggled to balance his artistic ambitions with the demands of patrons and the realities of political change. His great mural, The Battle of Anghiari, intended for the Palazzo Vecchio, was never completed, and only preparatory sketches and copies by other artists remain. Despite these challenges, Leonardo continued to work and explore. He deepened his studies of anatomy, dissecting human bodies in secret and producing some of the most detailed and accurate drawings ever made. He investigated the flow of water, the growth of plants, and the movement of the stars. His notebooks from this period are filled with observations, questions, and reflections, testament to his undiminished curiosity. Yet, there were signs of weariness. Leonardo's health began to decline, and he suffered from bouts of melancholy and frustration. He often lamented the unfinished nature of his work, the limitations of his patrons, and the fleetingness of time. In his notes, he wrote, "As a well-spent day brings happy sleep, so a life well used brings happy death." These words reflect both his acceptance of mortality and his belief in the value of a life devoted to learning and creation. In 1516, Leonardo accepted an invitation from King Francis I of France, who admired his genius and offered him a place of honor at the royal court. Leonardo traveled to Amboise in the Loire Valley, where he spent his final years in relative comfort and tranquility. He was given the use of the Château du Close-Luce, near the king's residence, and was free to pursue his studies and projects as he wished. In France, Leonardo was treated with great respect. He became a trusted advisor to the king, discussing art, architecture, and engineering. He continued to draw, paint, and write, though his physical strength was waning. His right hand became partially paralyzed, limiting his ability to paint, but he continued to sketch and make notes with his left. He was surrounded by loyal pupils, including Francesco Melzi. Leonardo da Vinci died peacefully at Close-Luce at the age of 67, according to tradition. King Francis was at his side, holding the hand of the man he called the greatest mind of all time. Leonardo was buried in the chapel of St. Hubert, in the grounds of the Château d'Amboise. The decline and fall of Leonardo's life was not a story of failure or defeat, but of transition and fulfillment. Though many of his projects remained unfinished, and some of his greatest works were lost or damaged, his influence endured. His notebooks, paintings, and inventions continued to inspire artists, scientists, and thinkers for centuries to come. As we leave behind the quiet rooms of Close-Luce and the gentle landscape of the Loire Valley, let us reflect on the legacy of Leonardo da Vinci, a legacy that transcends the boundaries of time and place, and continues to illuminate the path of human creativity and discovery. As we move gently from the quiet of Leonardo's final years, let us reflect on the enduring legacy and influence of his life and work, and the quiet awe of artists and scientists who, across generations, have looked to Leonardo as a source of inspiration and wonder. His legacy is not confined to a single field or era, but radiates outward, touching art, science, engineering, and the very way we see the world. Leonardo da Vinci's influence began in his own lifetime, as his paintings, drawings, and inventions were admired by patrons, fellow artists, and scholars. His reputation as a master of painting was established with works like The Last Supper and the Mona Lisa, which became models of composition, technique, and psychological depth. Artists from across Italy and beyond traveled to see his works, to learn from his methods, and to emulate his style. His approach to art rooted in careful observation, anatomical study, and the use of light and shadow transformed the practice of painting. The technique of sfumato, which Leonardo perfected, allowed for subtle transitions between colors and tones, creating a sense of depth and realism that was unprecedented. His studies of the human body, both in life and in dissection, set new standards for accuracy and expression, influencing generations of artists, including Raphael and Michelangelo. But Leonardo's legacy extends far beyond the realm of art. His notebooks, filled with sketches, diagrams, and reflections, became a treasure trove for later scientists, engineers, and inventors. In these pages, Leonardo explored the principles of mechanics, hydraulics, optics, and anatomy, often anticipating discoveries that would not be fully understood for centuries. His designs for flying machines, armored vehicles, and mechanical devices reveal a mind that was both imaginative and rigorously analytical. The rediscovery and publication of Leonardo's notebooks in the centuries after his death brought new attention to his scientific and technical achievements. Scholars marveled at his insights into the structure of the heart, the flow of water, and the dynamics of flight. Engineers studied his designs for bridges, canals, and machines, finding in them the seeds of modern technology. Leonardo's belief in the unity of art and science, and his conviction that knowledge could be gained through observation and experiment, helped to shape the development of the scientific method. Leonardo's influence can also be seen in the broader currents of culture and thought. He became a symbol of the Renaissance man, a person of wide-ranging curiosity, skill, and creativity. His life and work embodied the ideals of humanism, the belief in the potential of the individual, and the value of learning. Writers, philosophers, and educators have looked to Leonardo as an example of what can be achieved when the boundaries between disciplines are crossed, and when the pursuit of knowledge is guided by wonder and humility. In the centuries following his death, Leonardo's reputation grew. His paintings were collected and displayed in the world's great museums. His notebooks were studied by scholars and translated into many languages. His image appeared in books, films, and popular culture, often surrounded by an aura of mystery and genius. The Mona Lisa, in particular, became an icon of beauty and enigma, drawing millions of visitors to the Louvre in Paris each year. Leonardo's legacy is also felt in the ongoing quest to understand and preserve his works. Art historians, conservators, and scientists have devoted countless hours to studying his paintings. The restoration of the Last Supper, the analysis of the Mona Lisa's layers, and the decipherment of his mirror writing are all part of a continuing dialogue between past and present. Perhaps most profoundly, Leonardo's influence endures in the spirit of inquiry and creativity that he embodied. He reminds us that the world is full of mysteries waiting to be explored, that beauty and truth are found in careful observation, and that the boundaries between art and science are not barriers, but bridges. His life is a testament to the power of curiosity, the value of perseverance. His influence lives on in every artist who seeks to capture the play of light on a face, in every scientist who asks how the world works, and in every person who looks at the world with wonder and asks why. As we leave behind the echoes of Leonardo's influence, let us turn now to the discoveries of the modern age, the excavations, studies, and revelations that have deepened our understanding of his life and work. Let us now drift into the world of discovery and rediscovery, a world where the traces of Leonardo da Vinci's life and work are uncovered, studied, and cherished by generations who came long after his passing. Imagine the quiet of a library filled with ancient manuscripts, the careful hands of a conservator turning the fragile pages of a notebook, and the gentle brush of dust from a centuries-old painting. In this world, the past is not lost, but patiently revealed, piece by piece, unlike the ruins of ancient cities or the tombs of forgotten kings. The archaeological legacy of Leonardo da Vinci is found not in buried treasures, but in the survival and recovery of his art, his writings, and the places he lived and worked. Each discovery adds a new layer to our understanding, bringing us closer to the man behind the legend. The most significant archaeological discoveries related to Leonardo are his notebooks, thousands of pages filled with sketches, diagrams, and notes written in his distinctive mirror script. After his death, these notebooks were entrusted to his pupil and companion, Francesco Melzi. Over the centuries, they were scattered, sold, and sometimes forgotten, their pages ending up in private collections, libraries, and museums across Europe. The process of gathering, cataloging, and studying these notebooks has been a long and careful one. In the 19th and 20th centuries, can be found in the Biblioteca Ambrosiana in Milan, the Institut de France in Paris, the British Library in London, and the Royal Collection at Windsor Castle. Each codex, such as the Codex Atlanticus, the Codex Leicester, and the Codex Arundel, a window into Leonardo's mind. The pages reveal his thoughts on anatomy, engineering, painting, and the natural world, with new insights and connections emerging as technology allows for deeper analysis and comparison. The search for Leonardo's lost works has also been a story of discovery and intrigue. Some of his paintings, such as the Battle of Anghiari and the Leda and the Swan, are known only through copies and written descriptions. Art historians and scientists have used X-rays, infrared imaging, and other techniques to search for hidden layers and lost masterpieces beneath later paintings and walls. The quest to find the original Battle of Anghiari fresco in Florence's Palazzo Vecchio of both science and devotion. The Last Supper, painted on the wall of a Milanese monastery, suffered centuries of damage from humidity, war, and neglect. painstaking efforts over decades have stabilized and revealed much of Leonardo's original vision, allowing visitors to experience its power and beauty. The Mona Lisa, protected behind glass in the Louvre, has been studied with the most advanced imaging technologies. The house where he was born in Vinci, the churches where he was baptized and buried, the castles and studios where he worked all have been preserved and studied, offering glimpses into the environments that shaped his life. Archaeologists and historians have examined the landscapes of Tuscany, Milan, and the Loire Valley, seeking to understand the world Leonardo knew. In recent years, DNA analysis has been used to study the remains believed to be Leonardo's and to trace his family lineage. Digital technology has allowed for the virtual reconstruction of lost works, the three-dimensional modeling of his inventions, and the sharing of his notebooks with a global audience. Each new tool brings us closer to the details of Leonardo's life and the workings of his mind. The story of archaeological discovery in Leonardo's world is not one of final answers, but of ongoing exploration. Each manuscript, each painting, each fragment of evidence adds to the mosaic of his legacy. The work of scholars, conservators, and scientists is a continuation of Leonardo's own spirit of inquiry, a testament to the enduring fascination. Let us turn to the world of modern scholarship and debate, a world where the meaning and significance of Leonardo's life and work are continually re-examined, discussed, and celebrated. Let us now drift into the world of modern scholarship and debate, a world where the life and work of Leonardo da Vinci are studied. Imagine the quiet of a university library, the soft murmur of discussion in a seminar room. In this world, Leonardo's legacy is not fixed, but alive, constantly evolving as new questions are asked and new answers sought. The study of Leonardo. For centuries, he was celebrated as the archetype of the Renaissance man, a figure of boundless curiosity and genius. Early biographers, such as Giorgio Vasari, painted a picture of Leonardo as a man of extraordinary talent, whose works were touched by a kind of divine inspiration. These accounts, while admiring, often blended fact with legend, creating an image that was as much myth as reality. In the 19th and 20th centuries, the rise of modern scholarship brought new rigor to the study of Leonardo's life and work. Art historians, scientists, and archivists began to examine his paintings, notebooks, and letters with fresh eyes, seeking to separate the man from the myth. The publication and translation of his notebooks opened new avenues of research, revealing the full range of his interests and achievements. One of the central debates in Leonardo Bu's studies concerns the relationship between his art and his science. Some scholars have emphasized his achievements as a painter, focusing on the technical mastery and psychological depth of works like the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. Others have highlighted his contributions to anatomy of discussion. Some have argued that Leonardo anticipated the scientific method with his emphasis on empirical observation, hypothesis, and testing. Others point out that he often lacked the mathematical rigor and systematic approach that would characterize later science. The interpretation of Leonardo's notebooks has been another area of lively debate. The mirror writing, the unfinished projects, and the sheer volume of material have posed challenges for scholars. Some have seen the notebooks as evidence of a restless, distracted mind, unable to bring projects to completion. Others have argued that the notebooks reflect a deliberate and methodical approach, in which Leonardo used writing and drawing as tools for thinking and discovery. The attribution of works to Leonardo has also been a source of controversy, because he often worked with assistants and pupils, and because many of his paintings were left unfinished or have been lost. The authentication of paintings, such as the Salvator Mundi, has sparked intense discussion involving art historians, scientists, and the public. Modern technology has played a crucial role in advancing Leonardo's studies. Techniques such as X-ray imaging, infrared reflectography, and digital analysis have allowed scholars to examine the layers of his paintings, revealing changes, corrections, and hidden details. The digitization of his notebooks has made them accessible to a global audience, enabling new forms of collaboration and research. The study of Leonardo's life has also been enriched by new discoveries in archives and libraries. Letters, contracts, and legal documents have shed light on his relationships with patrons, his movements across Italy and France, and the practical realities of his career. These sources have helped to humanize Leonardo, revealing a man who faced challenges, disappointments, and moments of doubt, as well as triumphs. In recent years, scholars have also explored the broader context of Leonardo's world, the social, political, and intellectual currents that shaped his life and work. The study of Renaissance humanism, the history of science, and the networks of patronage and collaboration have all contributed to a deeper understanding of Leonardo's place in history. Debates continue, and new questions are always being asked. Was Leonardo's genius unique, or was he part of a larger movement of creativity and discovery? What can we learn from his methods, his habits of mind, and his approach to the mysteries of nature? In the end, the study of Leonardo da Vinci is a journey without a final destination. Each generation brings its own questions, its own perspectives, and its own sense of wonder. The debates and discoveries of modern scholarship are not a sign of uncertainty, but of vitality, testament to the enduring fascination of a life lived in pursuit of knowledge and beauty. As we leave behind the quiet halls of scholarship and the lively debates of the present, let us turn to the final chapter of our journey, a gentle reflection on the significance. To a gentle close, let us pause and reflect on the significance, the legacy, and the enduring impact of this remarkable figure. Allow your mind to settle, as if in the quiet of a Tuscan evening, the last rays of sunlight fading over distant hills. Age a time when the boundaries between art and science, faith and reason, tradition and innovation. His life was shaped by the rhythms of the land, the pulse of the city, the rituals of the church, and the currents of thought that swept through Renaissance Italy. From his humble beginnings in the small town of Vinci, Leonardo's journey took him to the great cities of Florence, Milan, and Rome, and finally to the tranquil landscapes of France. Along the way, he observed, questioned, and created, always seeking to understand the world more deeply, and to express its beauty in new and lasting ways. His art remains among the most celebrated and beloved in the world. The enigmatic smile of the Mona Lisa, the dramatic composition of the Last Supper, the delicate studies of plants, animals, and the human formal speak to a vision that was both precise and poetic, grounded in observation, yet open to wonder. Leonardo's paintings invite us to look more closely, to see the world not just as it appears, but as it truly is, complex, interconnected, and full of mystery. His notebooks, filled with sketches, diagrams, and reflections, reveal a mind that was endlessly curious and profoundly disciplined. Leonardo's approach to knowledge was holistic. He saw no division between art and science, between the study of nature and the practice of creativity. Accomplished, but in the example he set a life devoted to learning, to seeing, and to creating. The influence of Leonardo da Vinci has echoed through the centuries. Artists, scientists, engineers, and thinkers have drawn inspiration from his work, his methods, and his spirit. In the laboratories of scientists, the studios of artists, and the imaginations of dreamers, Leonardo's presence can still be felt. Yet, Leonardo's life was also marked by uncertainty, by unfinished projects, and by questions that remained unanswered. He was often restless, moving from city to city, from one patron to another, always seeking new challenges and new opportunities. But perhaps it is this very incompleteness that makes his legacy so powerful. Leonardo reminds us that the pursuit of knowledge is never finished, that every answer leads to new questions. Leonardo reflected on the passage of time, the fleetingness of life, and the value of a day well spent. He wrote, "As a well-spent day brings happy sleep, so a life well used brings happy death." These words, simple and profound, capture the essence of his philosophia, belief in the dignity of work, the joy of discovery, and the peace that comes from a life lived with purpose and curiosity. As you rest now, let the story of Leonardo da Vinci linger in your thoughts. Imagine the gentle hills of Tuscany, the bustling streets of Florence, the grand courts of Milan. Picture the artist at his easel, the scientist at his desk, the engineer at his drawing board. Invites us to look more closely at the world around us, to ask questions, to seek connections, and to find beauty in the details. His legacy is not just in the works he left behind, but in the way he saw the world with wonder, with humility. You, a gentle reminder that curiosity is a gift, that learning is a lifelong journey, and that the world is full of wonders waiting to be discovered. May your dreams be filled with light, with questions, and with the quiet joy of seeing the world anew. Good night.